a strange week. It was actually almost 45 degrees yesterday, which was very strange, in the middle of January too. Anyways, we wanted to make a video talking about a few different options you'd have for heating a cabin, or a home, whatever that is, or a garage. But from what we've seen, these seem to be the most prevalent, and most homes either have one of these sources. So what we want to do is we want to talk about wood stoves versus Toyo stoves versus oil drip heaters. So we can kind of do a pros and cons on each one, but we figured we'll kind of show each stove, and then we can come back and talk about each one and what we like about it and might not like about it. So we'll just get right to it. So wood stove, obviously, right? Fuel source, wood. We use this Yodel model 602, I think it is. Krista, is that right? Yeah. So this is the stove we happen to use. Puts out a ton of heat. We've got a small cabin, so even better and even easier. But all you have to do is have nice dry wood, put it in there, light it, make sure all your stuff's plumbed in right and all that, of course, but that's all there is to it. So obvious pros there, but we can come back later and talk a little bit more about it. But anybody that doesn't know out there, so that's a wood stove, right? So we'll take a look at Toyo stove and what that is next, and then we'll go to an oil drip and then kind of show you that and how that works. So I'll see you over at the Toyo. Okay, hopefully I didn't skip over the wood stove without giving more information. I would assume anybody watching the channel probably knows what a wood stove is, but if we happen to leave out some information you were looking for, just comment below or whatever, and I'd be happy to help whatever I can. Anyways, so this is what you call a Toyo stove, and this runs on heating oil or heating fuel, same thing. And basically you'll have a big tank outside. Most of them are around 300 gallons, and you plumb that into your house through like a 3/8 copper line, and then that copper line comes right into the back of the Toyo, and you do have to plug it in, but it produces all the heat from that heating oil. So nice thing about these, you have a temperature selector, and then it has a sensor that you hang on the wall kind of near the stove. So if you set it to 72, maybe it'll heat up to 73 or 74, and then it'll shut itself off. So it only heats when it needs to heat, right? So I'll grab the camera and I'll show kind of a close-up on this display. But basically you just set your temperature, and then you can even set it on timers, when to turn on, when to turn off, and stuff like that. So these are super handy. Heating fuel puts off the heat, and then there's a fan on the back of this that kind of helps blow all that hot air too. In our case, we put it right at the bottom of the stairs. That way we're kind of blowing into the downstairs and we're blowing upstairs at the same time. So this spot works pretty good for us. Another nice thing about these is the exhaust. I think they call it a direct vent, which means there's only one hole you have to drill through your wall, and the pipe that you use, it's a special pipe. It pulls fresh air into the intake, and it runs the exhaust through that same pipe. There's two different pipes inside of each other, but anyways, really easy to move and install and put them wherever you want to put them. Why don't I grab the camera and I'll show you the back side of this, and then we'll move on to that oil drip stove and I'll show you that one. So you have your temperature selector right here. You can move it up to that. Right now it's so warm outside and we have the fire going, it's already at 78, so this is really good just kind of as a secondary heat source. We usually just leave it set around 70 or 72, and then any time if the fire goes out or it's not keeping up, this will kick on and bump the heat up a little bit. So we just use this as a secondary source. And then I'll show you the back side over here. Here's that fan. Okay, there we go. So that's the fuel coming in, and then we put a shut-off valve right there just in case, you know, if we wanted to take it apart and service it or anything like that, we can shut off the fuel right there. And then whatever's in front of that shut-off will be minimal, so we won't end up with a bunch of heating fuel everywhere. So that's the line coming in, and then I'll show you over on the other side the vent, which is right here. And then you can see it's got the fresh air intake, and then it's also got the exhaust. The exhaust is that metal one, it's a shorter 90 elbow. And then the intake is this bigger soft line. I'll go around on the outside and I'll show you what the vent looks like on the outside. Okay, so that's the vent on the outside of the wall, or the exhaust in the vent. And it's not running right now, of course, because it's so warm in there. But super simple, easy to do yourself. And that's what a Toyo stove is. So let's go look at one of the drip stoves next. Okay, so this is an oil drip stove, and these things are really cool. It runs off of heating fuel just like the Toyo does, but it doesn't take any electricity, right? So same concept, you'll have a fuel cell or maybe a 300-gallon tank or something like that outside. That gets plumbed right into the back of this stove. And then you have a little metal selector between low, medium, and high, how much oil you want to have drip out into the bottom of this, and that's what creates your flame. So super easy to use. They don't use any electricity, and you're not constantly having to feed logs into the fire, but you still get that wood stove look. So really like these things. They're super handy, especially for power outages. That last storm we had, this house in particular, we know they lost power for almost a week. So just with this going set on low, it's probably about 1,000 square feet here. This was able to stay right around 70 degrees the entire time just from this stove. So every house is going to be different, or every cabin is going to be different, of course. But just knowing that, you know, you have a constant heat source coming in, pretty neat. So when you go to light them, they're really simple. You just turn that selector down to low, so you have a little bit of a flow coming out. There's a metal cage inside of here. You'll pull that metal cage out from the center, and then you'll be able to see a little bit of oil dripping on the bottom. So you light that oil. Once that's lit, put the cage back in, and you're ready to go. So anyways, these things are really neat, but I'll try and take a little footage of the back of this so you can see what that selector looks like that I was talking about. But besides that, we'll just see you back at the cabin and talk about it. So see you then. Okay, so I'll go ahead and show you the back side of this and that little selector for the fuel flow that I was talking about. Hopefully you can focus okay. So right here, this is the selector, and then when you have it all the way off, you can actually feel it click into the first position right there. And then way down here, even harder to see, there's little notches for each different setting that you can use. So super handy. I'll go ahead and show you the front and open the door one more time. Yeah, just like that. So we'll see you guys back at the cabin, and we'll kind of talk about the three of these and what we think about them. So I'll see you there.
All right, we are back at our cabin now, and thought we could sit down and talk to you a little bit about the pros and cons of the heat sources that Blake had gone over earlier in the video. So we will start off with our wood stove. We love our wood stove, and even when we were in Arizona, planning on moving up here to Alaska, we knew we wanted to have a wood stove. You don't need any power. There's like an unlimited amount of wood around here, and we have, you know, plenty of dead trees on our property alone, and not including the trees we do want to cut down to expand for a garden and chicken coop and things like that. There are places that you can go here in the state of Alaska to go get your own firewood, or you are kind of stuck with buying kiln dried firewood, but they can have a pretty long back order. And if anything happens to the kiln, like we saw this winter, it goes on a major back order and the price goes up. So if you can get your own firewood and you have a wood stove, you pretty much have heat. The only downside is you have to keep refilling it. So if you do plan to leave for a weekend, or you do plan to leave for an extended amount of time, you know, keep in mind that that is going to go out and it will not heat your cabin up. If you have a dry cabin, no big deal. But for us, we have water lines, and we don't want to risk those freezing up and eventually bursting and leaking and making a huge mess in our cabin. But you can cook on it, you can boil your water on it, and it puts out a good amount of heat, quite a bit amount of heat, in fact, for us. Let me think. I know we did the math on ours, and we go through about a quart of wood every month. So come this summer, we will be preparing to stack and cut 6 cords of wood to get ready for next winter, just based on how often we burn in the wood stove and how much heat we want for the winter. But obviously in Alaska, your winter is a little bit longer, so we just want to make sure we have plenty on hand. You never know what can happen up here. Going into the second heating source, being the Toyo. I didn't even know what a Toyo was before I moved up here, and you know, it came with the cabin. It's not like we went out and we bought a Toyo, but it came with the cabin, and it came with 150 gallons of heating fuel. So when we got that hooked up and plugged in, oh, I couldn't believe it. It put out a ton of heat as well. You can set it and adjust the temperature to stay set at whatever you want it to. For us, it's around, I think, 70 degrees. And yeah, it works really well, but you have to plug it in. If the power goes out like it did, you know, in the winter storm that we had in December, you're looking at hooking up, we would have to hook up a propane generator to run our oil Toyo heater. So
Not very efficient. They're super handy, but the only downside there really is power outages.
Yeah.
And we've learned that they happen, so the idea of having to run a generator just to run the small amount of electrics for those, it's a bummer, but it wouldn't put us off getting one or keeping one.
Yeah.
No matter what we had or use, I think we'd always want to have a wood stove. You know, it's your only source of free heat. If you can find wood, you know, to stick in there, then, you know, you're heating. And I hear stories from my grandma when her and my grandpa first came up to Alaska in the 70s, and they had to burn green wood all winter, but, you know, you have to do what you have to do. So that's what they were able to do. And he just made sure that he cleaned out the chimney pipe every single Saturday. So be safe about whatever you're doing, but, you know, a wood stove is your only source of free heat. So love the wood stove, love the Toyo because it's convenient and actually has a thermostat that you can set, you know, so it's efficient. But just think about power outages too. So
yeah, if we left for the weekend, we know we could hook up the Toyo and have it set at, you know, 50 degrees even, and nothing inside our cabin will freeze so long as the power doesn't go out. Yeah, and the third one is our oil drip stove.
not ours, we don't
Not
have
ours,
one,
yeah, but
but an oil drip stove, right?
yeah, the third one we will talk about is an oil drip stove. We are planning on building a garage, a heated garage this summer, and that will be our go-to heat source for the garage. It's like a wood stove and a Toyo stove combined. You have the ambiance of a wood stove, and for me, I love that. but you also have the ease of not having to load it, not having to gather your wood, not having to keep an eye on it all the time.
Or worry about electricity. Not taking electric.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because you don't plug it in, yeah. Yeah, so it works out really good for that aspect. And I think, like a lot of places, the cost of everything is going up. So that can be a con with the heating fuel. But here in Alaska, we have gas stations, and like you can go fill up on unleaded or diesel, you can go fill up on heating fuel. And a lot of people up here have auxiliary tanks in the back of their truck, and they go get 50 gallons or 70 gallons, and they come back and fill up their own heating fuel, either for that oil drip or the Toyo. That is something we plan on doing. We have a truck with an auxiliary tank on it already. We just have to get the pump and I think clean it out, because I don't think we've ever used it. But either way, we will be in a position to go get our own heating fuel and come back here and fill it up, because the delivery companies up here for heating fuel, right now they're on a 6-week back order. So if you were down to 10 gallons of heating fuel, you're going to be out of heating fuel for a little while. I think we take about, with the Toyo,
We use about 2 gallons a day.
Okay.
One thing, like Krista was saying, is don't let yourself run out of heating fuel. Keep an eye on your tank. Know that, they can be a month and a half out on deliveries. Yeah, you're always able to go down, with a 5-gallon can or 10-gallon cans, whatever you can do, and fill up yourself. But if you're waiting on a delivery and that's your only way to get fuel to the house, keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
'Cause
And they have
You never know.
autofill up here. Like the companies up here, they automatically come out every month or so and top you off. But, you are going to pay more for the heating fuel that is delivered right to your door rather than going and getting it yourself. So yeah, those are kind of the 3 basic heating sources up here in Alaska. This is a video that I would have loved to watch so I can understand, how does the Toyo even heat up? Not even knowing that it ran on heating fuel, I was really confused as to how they worked and if they were just a glorified heater, but they're a lot more, I don't want to say complex, but they work a lot more and run a lot more efficiently than a traditional heater.
And it's
it's
the only
very
one that
common.
gives you a thermostat,
Yeah.
so it's
What
efficiency is
temperature
good
it
there.
is.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, that's all we have on our heating video here today. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to reach out. We always love hearing new input, and I don't think I will ever get tired of talking about or hearing about Alaska or any cold weather area whatsoever. That's what living in Arizona for 20 years will do to you. It'll make you appreciate winter a lot more. But yeah, figure out what works best for you and your situation. For us, we have pets. We don't have a dry cabin, so we want that Toyo. But also at the same time, we want that wood stove, so we don't have to rely on anybody or any company for heating fuel or electricity. So the idea that we can go get our own firewood, that makes my heart happy. Knowing that we have unlimited heat up here in Alaska.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. But we appreciate you watching, and yeah, like I said, if you have any questions or comments, we'd love to hear from you, and feel free to reach out anytime. You guys have a good day.